was unsaid. And now, 4 years later, I've said a lot to her because she listens to me all the time. But I came home from that changed. I came home with that. I went down there with sort of that shackled or gag over my mouth of not being able to say everything I wanted to say. But I came home and I really felt shackled. I felt lost. I wanted to scream, but couldn't. Then the pandemic hit. And this extreme extrovert was trapped in her house.
Hello. Hello.
Hello.
Welcome to How I Escaped Prison, a new episode today. My name is Andreea Parc.
And I'm Alexa Dumitru.
And today we have a special guest. She's a true friend, and she's a coach. She's a mother. She's a wife. A true friend. Michelle Goth. She goes by Shell. And I am thrilled that she accepted to be our first guest.
We are thrilled.
We are thrilled. And with this, I will thank you so much for being here, and I will let you introduce yourself and give the listeners a little bit of your wisdom and who you are.
Wisdom and who I am. Wow. So to start with, it is beyond my honor to be here. So as Andreea stated, she and I have journeyed for coming up on 3 years now together through our coaching certification, how we decided to establish our businesses, what we decided to look for. We started out very much in a reciprocity situation where we would share coaching sessions. So I would do a session for Andreea, Andreea would do a session for me. And as we progressed and Andrea's mission became clearer, I realized I really needed a coach. I didn't need a therapist. I didn't need a best friend. I needed someone who could present a level of accountability that wasn't judgmental. And what was happening for me during that time is a lot, an awful lot. And we'll get into that, I'm sure, because you're going to ask how I escaped prison and my mental prison. And a lot of it occurs in the 2020 to 2024 range. I still feel incarcerated. So I will tell you that I am a work in progress. As Andreea said, yeah, I'm a mom of a beautiful, vibrant 23-year-old who is discovering her own life and becoming her own person, and is my only, because she was our gift from God. She was a honeymoon present and my only pregnancy that survived. So Abby is beyond important to us. My husband, Dan, and I have been married for 24 years, been together 28. And we've experienced a lot of life together. And we're also radically different humans, which makes that a lot of fun too. But in my entire journey, what I discovered was I absolutely want to change the way people engage with each other, especially at work. So my motto is to change the face of business around the globe. My company is called Awareness, Leadership, and Results, otherwise known as ALR Coaching. And I focus primarily on helping leaders be kind and listen. So when someone asks me what's my elevator pitch, that's it. I teach people how to be kind and listen. And in the midst of this journey and discovery, I realized I was struggling with being kind to those that I love. And I was really struggling to listen to the world around me. So what we state we want to do and give to the world is often what we're trying to sort through and solve ourselves. So hence the reason I'm hanging out with you both today. And Alexa, it's incredible to have watched you through the sidelines. Your creation and art and fashion is stunning and unbelievably fun to watch kind of unfold and have you become you and your own brand. So when you asked me to come join you today, I was shocked and happy and terrified because I also know these conversations can get deep and scary. So hopefully the audience will follow along with my crazy rabbit trails and enjoy our conversation as we kind of walk through what does life look like.
Well, thank you so much. I mean, this is our first kind of real official time meeting. We've seen each other here and there on Zoom, and this is our first official time meeting, and it's a pleasure. I mean, I've heard so much about you for 3+ years. And thank you so much for, being there, for accepting and, being there for my mom and subsequently for me, because so many times she's come to me and been like, I just had a conversation with Shell and I just want to say whatever. Like you are kind of the pillar of her processing. And yeah, so I'm so excited that we finally get to be together and talk with me a little bit too.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And it's funny that we discussed starting a podcast together a while ago because we had some deep conversations throughout the time. And although we are coaches and although we work with ourselves, it's incredibly interesting how deep conversations we can have and how much we can help each other in processing things and going through
Absolutely.
things.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Because we're human as well. I mean, if we're coaches, doesn't mean that we're shield or yes, it's a working process, and we're helping each other. So thank you so much for being here for me along the way. So it's a mutual gratitude and what's the word that I'm looking for?
Well, it's a sense of reciprocity because when I think about, if I can, when I think about how we came together, and Alexa, I don't know if you know this story or not, but
No,
we were on a coaching class where we were learning about a particular methodology, and Andreea was on screen, and all of the 8 other little students were there, and we're all kind of learning. And she just slowly drops into the conversation. I had this experience when I was in prison, and da 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 da. And I pulled back, and I had already known her for about 5 months, which this had not dropped into conversation as casually as your mom just, yeah, I had this experience when I was in prison. And so one of the other students texted me on the side and said, in prison? And I was like, well, I know. Yeah, did we hear that right? In prison? Did she say in prison? And I said, she's a lawyer. She must be talking about consulting. She must be talking about some sort of service that she provides, because Andreea had already started to develop her Apple program. She had already started to develop her coaching program.
And my headset just died. All right. How are we doing there? Can you hear me okay?
That sounds good. Yeah. I didn't notice it.
Oh, good. All right. So I'll just take that out of my ear. So in the midst of it, she just continues. And of course, because I'm me, the group was like, you got to find out. I was like, how do I ask somebody, have you been to prison? That's
You're
on
the guinea pig.
right. It's like, let me just ask this random, because I thought maybe she meant jail. Maybe she meant that she got, some sort of minimum infraction and she was in jail. And so a couple weeks went by, pairs of coaching sessions. And finally I gained the courage. And I was just like, so I want to clarify, are you a prison consultant? And she said, I will be. But I was like, okay, how do I ask this directly? And she says, I was in prison. have you not Googled me? At this point, why would I Google someone in my class? Because that's just not something that people do. And
Right.
so then I Googled your mom,
Uh-huh.
which was, I listened to your podcast when you said you saw her pop up on TV.
Yeah.
So when I Googled your mom, I was like, holy smokes, this lady's been through a lot of life.
Yeah.
I had no idea. And then I sat down and had a conversation with my husband, and I said, so Andreea Dumitru, Andreea Parc is that Andreea. And
Yeah.
he was like, oh my gosh, that one? So he knew of the case, he knew of the situation. And we both kind of just sat there, and he's like, how you feeling about this? I said, she's one of the best coaches I've ever experienced. Her life and her salvation came from such a deep, deep place of hard realization. And then I said to my husband, I'm like, her kid's Abby's age. And it happened when she was 15. That had to have impacted that family in an incredible way. And to hear the two of you share that with such grace and such love for each other was, and Alexa, kudos to you for such honesty on how it emotionally and physically affected you, because that's a huge developmental stage. But at that point, I came back to Andreea and I said, so I Googled you. And she's like, good. So what are we going to talk about today? Like, it was nothing. Just, we're not going to pay attention to that. Good. I'm glad you Googled me. And I had that moment of, does it matter?
Right.
And it doesn't. It doesn't matter if a person's been incarcerated, because the things that she and I had already been talking about for the 6 months prior were really about mental imprisonment and challenges that we put ourselves into, and the constraints and binds that we put on our own beings and our kids and family. And so at that moment, it was a huge defining moment for me in my relationship with Andreea, and also my relationship with myself, because I walked into that coaching call when she randomly drops a bomb in the middle of the session, walked out of it with judgment of going, this woman's been in prison, hanging out. And then she's like, yeah, with El Chapo. I'm like, that's okay. We're adding that clarifier. We're adding that clarifier. This is a real federal place. And then there became a real feminine, well-balanced, unbelievably kind, take no bullshit coach in front of me on a regular basis. And the judgment was gone, except for the judgment I had on myself for having that moment of, this is what we're doing. Okay. So that was my.
I think it's so important that you recognize that judgment with yourself, because it's normal to have preconceived, notions and judgment. Obviously, we're human, but to recognize that and to realize that it's judgment on yourself, not necessarily on her, that's really like, it's a big step. And I don't know, hearing you talk about how that piece of information impacted you, it's so odd to me, because to us it's like not even I mean, it's like we're talking about a movie. We're so like far removed. And it's so weird to me too.
Yeah, and a couple of friends actually called me and were talking about judgment. Why are you talking about prison? Why are you telling everybody that you were in prison and laughing about it? That's not okay. Like, what's not okay? I'm talking about a part of my life that is behind me, is not defining me in any way, but it happened, and I took the
The power.
the lessons, And I'm moving on, and I'm trying to teach other people, and by talking about it, how can people escape from their mental prison by being constructively
Aware.
creative and aware.
Yeah, absolutely. But the reality of it is, we are not taught to be constructively aware. We are not, that is not something that we teach our children. You and I both attempted in many ways to teach our children to have that level of awareness, to understand their power as a woman, to understand their capabilities as a human in the world. But the world says something very different. And so, regardless of how holistic and beautiful we want the world to be, the world is full of prejudice and judgment. We're designed not by our source and spirit, but by the environment around us to other. We're designed to put people in buckets. And being in prison's a big bucket, which is why your friend is saying, why are you joking and having happiness about this? Now, I know that through our conversations, it wasn't an easy place for you to fully transition out of. And there's still moments of sadness that pop in. There's still life. There's still stuff. You've both talked about some of those challenges already. And it's a daily choice to be at the camp that you refer to, the second place that you were at, the other facility. You could walk off of that campus, or you could choose to stay and do the work. And that to me is very important, because I have a really strong fight or flight reaction. And when I get overwhelmed, lost, unwilling, chaotic, my immediate instinct is, I'm done. I'm done. I am walking off of this piece of property. I am going. But every time I go anywhere, I end up being at the same place with the same being, the same woman who had the same fears, the same worries as she did the moment she said, I am unwilling to do this anymore. And so Andrea's work around willingness has been what we refer to as my kind of yin yang travel between light and dark, constantly riding the line of the inner circle, and having an unwillingness to either embrace the darkness, embrace the shadows, embrace the hardship, and learn those lessons, or embrace the light and say, I am me. I am a beacon. I am joyful. I am capable. I am. And I ride that line of the yin and yang. If you think about the yin and yang symbol, there's that moment between the dark and the light. And I ride that thing like it's a pony. Because it's to decide to clean up the darkness, or embrace the lesson in the darkness, or decide to choose happiness and light. Those conscious decisions both have consequences. Just like randomly dropping in a call, I've been in prison. That's a consequence that comes from that. Some people may have said nothing. I can't shut my mouth. So I asked. And then made an incredible friend and a beautiful, beautiful ally in each other's success.
So now I guess we reached the point where I can ask you the question, when and or at what point in your life you realized you are in a mental prison?
Which is such a beautiful question. Honestly, when you sent them to me ahead of time, I read it and I was like, I'm not going to answer that out loud on a podcast. That's not going to happen. And the more I thought about it, and the more I thought about, is there a defining moment? In October of 2019, I knew my mom wasn't okay. And my dad just kept saying, she's tired. She's got a lot going on. And in my gut, I knew that something wasn't right. But I didn't. I made a decision to just let them figure it out, because my parents are, we dealt with my mom's health for a long time, and my dad is a superhuman. He had to care for her. She was the vibrant caregiver of our family for years. And when she had her first stroke, it was pretty hard on all of us. And she had strokes that didn't affect her physically, but really affected her emotionally and mentally. And so she was still very much an active part of our family, but life changed for a lot of us, our extended family, our personal family, and for my dad in particular. And he was her everything. And I could hear it on the phone in October of 19 that something wasn't okay. And I asked him, and he said, Michelle, I don't know. I don't know if she had another stroke. I don't know what's going on. All I know is I have my day-to-day. You're in Massachusetts. I'm in Florida. Unless something's different about it, it's my day-to-day. And so I had to accept it and just pray for it and be okay with it. And she ended up in January getting diagnosed with undiagnosed liver cancer, basically. So she ended up, not liver cancer, excuse me, liver failure. Her liver started to fail. And there was a lot that happened over the about 8 weeks from the time that we knew what was going on to the time that she passed on February 16th. I didn't have the easiest relationship with my mom. Every friend said, oh my gosh, you have the greatest mother in the world. She's awesome. She was the best Brownie leader. She was the best 4-H leader. She treated our family with just such joy and love. She and my brother had the most, I coveted their relationship. There was just such deep, deep public love. And she wanted the best for me. And I always wanted to just be me. And I am the best, right? Because that's what, you can do anything sort of mentality. That's how I popped out of the womb, is I can do anything. I don't, watch me. I'll try that. I can't do that. Watch me. I'll try. And we had a hard relationship. And I spent 12 days with her in the hospital as she was dying. And I realized how much I had not said and couldn't say because she was now unconscious. So I did say it. God and I chatted with her. I held her hand. One of my most treasured photos is me holding her hand. And I also had to deal with the grieving of my family. My daughter, it happened so fast, she couldn't really come down. She was in the middle of school stuff. My husband was in Massachusetts. I was there alone with my dad and brother and his wife. And we worked through it. We dealt through it. But I wanted so desperately to control everything. And I couldn't control anything. Her passing was beautiful, hard. But I didn't realize how much was unsaid. And now, 4 years later, I've said a lot to her because she listens to me all the time. But I came home from that changed. I came home with that. I went down there with sort of that shackled or, gag over my mouth of not being able to say everything I wanted to say. But I came home and I really felt shackled. I felt lost. I wanted to scream, but couldn't. Then the pandemic hit. And this extreme extrovert was trapped in her house. Couldn't go to work, couldn't see anybody but the two people I love the most who were making me the most crazy because they were right there all the time. And it just spiraled. And in the spiraling, a lot of things happened. And then I found out medically, I was at the final stages of menopause as well, which as a woman, we're not allowed to discuss that. I didn't know it when I was going through it. I found out basically in December that I had made it through menopause. But those 11 months was like being thrown into it wasn't like being thrown into solitary confinement. It was like I was thrown into a prison cafeteria and hope to God nobody stole my food and I didn't die, because it was so, nothing was the same. And then I was mad at my mom because, for crying out loud, I'm 50 plus and she's got that much control over me. She's dead. How does she have that much control over me? How was I so lost with someone who had already started to go years before? And it was really, really difficult. And life didn't stop. Even though COVID forced us to stop, life didn't stop. So.
And how did you cope with that?
Well, I thought I was losing my mind because I started dropping weight and having all kinds of other weird issues. And I talked to my doctor and she said, you need to eat when you're hungry and sleep when you're tired and find something that will allow you escape. And she used the word escape. And I started gardening. I cried in my plants. I gave them a lot of sodium. I cried a lot in my garden. And I walked my dog, because those were the only two things I could do that allowed me to completely release every emotion in my being, because Luna doesn't judge. And my tomatoes
Nor do the tomatoes.
Nor do the tomatoes. Exactly. And it was hot and nasty outside. So if I came in and my face was looking like something was wrong, it was because it was hot and yucky outside. So I could be. But gardening to me was, when we think about constructive choices, it was the most constructive choice, and still is. I'm an avid weeder. I weed a lot. I was on vacation in the Cape this week and I weeded the driveway of the Airbnb because I needed to step outside. My dad has a new wife. I stepped outside because I needed to step out for a hot second, and I weeded the driveway of the Airbnb. That's my biggest escape.
You know that I started the Constructive Escape movement, where we're helping people find constructive ways to cope with life. And I was thinking of you to do one, probably a workshop or something, where you tell people your story about how you coped with your ups and downs in life by gardening.
Yep. Gardening, walking, and eating. Sleep hygiene and food hygiene were the two things. I was convinced that there was something wrong with me. During that time, I dropped 30 pounds in about 4.5, 5 weeks, and I panicked. My doctor laughed. She's like, "You're all right. Eat when you're hungry, sleep when you're tired. You're all right." And then it kept falling off. And then finally she had me tested and found out I was postmenopausal. But nobody teaches you about the menopausal stuff either. Nobody tells you that you want to kiss people and kill them at the same time. Nobody tells you that you're going to make irrational statements and then hope to God you can shove those words back in your mouth, because you can't. They've already come out. And during that time, coming back to constructive, one of the things that, Andreea, you and I started working together shortly after all of this, was me really thinking about perspective. And so I dove deep into learning about emotional intelligence and perspective, because we have this tendency to assume we understand a person's intentions and actions. But the reality of it is that unless you are writing the script for what's happening in that person's head, you cannot define another person's intentions. And if you attempt to define their actions, it is only your perspective of their behavior. And that was monumental for me. I started a program called Model the Way because of that, because I realized if I wanted to have some semblance of control over my life during a time when the entire world was crazy, my support system had radically changed. Abby went off to college. She was able to go stay on campus during that. She had petitioned the college campus and she was off. Abby and I are very close. My husband and I were working through a lot of things, and my dad was in a very hard place. There was so much that wasn't okay. And I just wanted to cry all the time. And those that know me personally don't ever see that side of me because I'm not that kind of, I don't publicly cry, but I wanted to, like, every day. And so I had to choose happiness. And I realized it couldn't be fake. It had to be a conscious choice to model the behavior of perseverance, resistance to chaos, and modeling that there is no right or wrong. There's just this moment. We are going to work through this. It may not happen like we expect, but whatever happens, we are strong enough to persevere. And the only thing I could do was model that behavior. And then I got caught up in a book that helps me navigate that. I'm a big fan of the Leadership Challenge by Poons and Kuzner. And they talk about this idea that once you realize the behavior you want to model, you have to inspire other people by sharing your vision. And so people were like, gosh, how are you handling this? I'm like, moment by moment. At that point, my mantra was new minute, new moment. I always get to do my best. And if my best wasn't exactly what I wanted, I get to try again and move through the cycle of just dealing with the process, enabling other people to take care of themselves as well as I take care of myself, and encouraging people's hearts so that other people can model their way. And my way is different than yours. Your way is different than mine. Nobody should have a cookie cutter life experience. We all should be able to appreciate the other's perspective. And that was the biggest lesson for me, is that I wanted to understand other people's perspectives. I was having a hard time with that. But at the same time, I couldn't force anyone else to change. I could only model new minute, new moment for me. And that's what I did. And so I had to find ways to not get angry and not get frustrated and to see the good in humans and to be, like I said, crying my tomatoes.
So now that we are approaching the end, I would like to ask you from a perspective, talking about perspective of a coach, a mother, a wife, what pieces of wisdom or advice would you give for our listeners to take away from this episode of someone that goes through tough times in life?
So it's a very loaded question. And potentially we could, come back another time and talk deeper about it. But to answer it in a short and succinct way, there is no regret. There are only lessons. Do I regret not getting in a plane and going down to Florida and seeing my mom when my gut told me something wasn't right? Could we have helped her? I don't know. All I know is that it happened the way it happened. And the beauty of the experience was my dad and I became much closer. I got much closer with my brother and his wife. And I learned an awful lot about my need to control the scenario and that it can't always be, I can't make it perfect. Loss is going to happen. Hard stuff is going to happen. Pandemics are going to happen. And only thing we can do is be willing to navigate the moment with grace and love. Be kind and listen. And then when we consider what is fact, we have to really remember that it is just our perspective of another person's story. And as long as we're doing our best, it can always be modified. And I don't regret a minute of the hardness of 2019, 2020, or 2021. I don't regret a minute of it. Because if I wouldn't have gone through that, I wouldn't have started my business. I wouldn't have gotten certified as a coach. And I wouldn't be adamant that if I can model the way, so can you.
So basically, keep on moving.
Yeah.
Sometimes no, Andreea. Sometimes it means sit down and just cry in the garden with the tomatoes. What I really want everyone to be aware of is that your perspective is just that. It's a moment in time, and it can be adjusted, changed, altered, grown, or just appreciated. But willingness to see where you are in that moment in time without judgment is hard, but it makes all the difference in the world. And if you want something, you have to model that behavior for other people. You cannot change anyone else's behavior. It's all about, when I said I wanted to escape and run away, and I realize every time I do that, it's me still there, different field of grass, same problems. The only one I can really change is me. And sometimes it means movement. Sometimes it means sit and cry. And that's okay.
Okay, yeah. 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 All right. So thank you so much. We really hope to have you back at some point at another episode.
I
Thank you
appreciate it.
very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening.
Where can they find you?
So I'm on LinkedIn, Michelle Goth, and also ALR Coaching, and also at alrcoaching.com. And then Alexa will have the links below for you.
Yes, we'll put all of
Yes.
her links
And
in the
ladies,
description.
yes, what are you wearing today?
Aha.
So if you're wondering, we're wearing dresses by me. This was part of a collection that I did for June, and I'm also presenting it at New York Fashion Week in September. And this was a school project that I did. It's the same dress, different fabrics, but yeah, everything is natural fabrics and natural buttons. So yeah.
Excellent.
All right. Thank you very much. And for the listeners, thank you for listening. And if you want to hear more, please subscribe and hit the like button so you get more of our stories. Thank you. See you soon. Thank you.
Thank you, ladies.